Welcome to This Explainer. We're basically all taught to view success as this straight, linear climb, right? You work hard, you hone your strengths, and you just keep rising. But what if that exact upward trajectory is literally the thing setting you up for a catastrophic fall? Today, we're completely challenging that traditional view to explore a really fascinating and honestly kind of scary danger lurking right at the absolute peak of our achievements. So here's the question. Can your greatest strength actually destroy you? I know, it sounds totally counterintuitive, but this is our big idea for today. It's called the Icarus Paradox. It's this profound concept that the very formulas that built our initial success can totally cause our downfall if we let them harden into arrogance. And trust me, it's a trap that ensnares brilliant individuals and massive billion-dollar corporations alike.
Okay, let's dive into Act 1, Papa's Take and the Myth.
To lay the philosophical groundwork for our journey today, we're going to turn to the author of our source newsletter, affectionately known as Papa, and the generational wisdom of his father, Papa Q Bear. He said, "The world changes fast, sonny boy. Don't let your past successes trap you into arrogance and complacency." Man, that just brilliantly captures the whole essence of what we're talking about. If you want to survive your own success, you absolutely have to stay nimble and you have to stay humble. Now, to truly wrap our heads around this, we gotta look back at the Roman poet Ovid and the ancient myth that actually gives this paradox its name. It's the story of Daedalus, who crafted these incredible wings of wax and feathers so he and his son Icarus could escape a labyrinth. Daedalus explicitly warned his son to fly the middle path, not too low, not too high. But Icarus, well, he got totally drunk on that miraculous thrill of flight and grew arrogant. He climbed higher and higher, right toward the sun. And we all know what happened next. The heat melted the wax, and the very wings that granted him his freedom literally became the instrument of his plunging death.
Which brings us to Act 2, the tension.
Stepping out of ancient myth and right into the modern business world, researcher Richard Saul identified the exact mechanism behind this kind of downfall. He calls it active inertia. Okay, imagine you're driving a car and you suddenly hit a patch of ice. Your immediate instinct, the habit that usually keeps you perfectly safe, is to slam on the brakes, right? But on ice, that established pattern will literally spin you out of control. That's active inertia. It's when our early victories become blinders. When markets shift, dominant companies don't just stand still, they aggressively do the wrong thing by doubling down on their old winning formula. Over time, a fresh, innovative, competitive formula just calcifies. It hardens. Strategic frames turn into blinders that completely restrict your vision. Efficient processes devolve into mindless routines. Valuable resources, they turn into heavy millstones around your neck. Crucial relationships become shackles, and inspiring core values harden into oppressive, rigid dogmas. Let's actually look at how this plays out in the real world. First up, Firestone tires. Now, for 7 decades, they enjoyed this massive, explosive growth driven by a culture of maximizing output and just fierce employee loyalty. But when Michelin introduced the safer, longer-lasting radial tire, Firestone's established routines totally doomed them. Their managers were so stubbornly focused on their old, capacity-maximizing processes that they just kept churning out the old tires. They completely blinded themselves to the new technology right up until they lost their market dominance entirely. Then there's this staggering number, 1.2 billion pounds. That is the massive financial loss the UK grocery giant Tesco suffered when they launched their Fresh and Easy venture in the US. Why did it fail so spectacularly? Extreme overconfidence. They just assumed their highly specialized UK formula, grab-and-go ready meals, would work perfectly in America. They completely ignored the deeply ingrained differences in U.S. consumer habits. It's wild, but it proves how a specialized strength in one environment becomes a massive liability in another. And consider Xerox. Back in the 1970s, their strategic frames were hyper-focused on battling huge rivals like IBM and Kodak. And hey, this mindset worked great initially, but it became a fatal blind spot. Their gaze was locked so tightly on those giants that they completely ignored smaller newcomers like Canon and Ricoh. And guess what? Those newcomers sneaked right in and decimated Xerox's market share from the bottom up. But listen, this paradox doesn't just apply to physical products or corporate strategy, it even applies to the digital systems we rely on every single day. Researcher Helga Drummond analyzed how the Icarus Paradox applies to IT through what she calls destructive information systems. Basically, it's the irrationality of rationality. Think about it.
We implement these computer systems to make things incredibly efficient. But over time, that hyper-efficiency strips away the essential human elements, like face-to-face communication or mutual trust, that actually hold an organization together. The system becomes so incredibly rigid that it destroys the very environment it was meant to optimize.
This brings us to a really harsh law of diminishing returns. Over-reliance on rigid systems for nuanced work is a total trap. Computers are great, but they reduce complex reality into simple yes or no structures. When organizations force their people to just mindlessly follow an optimized system, they strip away human judgment and drive. Efficiency is great for well-structured problems, sure, but for true complexity, you can't rely on a rigid formula. You absolutely have to rely on developing your people.
All right, Act 3, the connection. So the crucial point here is that this isn't just a corporate problem. The exact same psychology operates inside our own minds. So I have to ask, where are your wings melting? Where is active inertia showing up in your own life? Are you leaning way too heavily on a skill that used to make you special, but is now keeping you from learning something new? Or, I don't know, are you doubling down on an old argument style with a friend or partner just because it worked in the past?
If you only remember one vivid metaphor from our explainer today, please let it be this. The armor of past victories can easily become a heavy anchor in a rising tide of complexity. It's so true, right? What protected you yesterday can literally drown you tomorrow. If the world is shifting, if the waters around you are rising, clinging rigidly to the strategies that won your past battles is only going to drag you straight to the bottom. Conclusion: staying nimble and humble. So, how do we actually avoid the fate of Icarus? Defeating this paradox basically comes down to 3 clear steps. Step 1, recognize when your strategic frames become blinders. You've got to periodically step back and question your routines. Step 2, challenge your own overconfidence. Success breeds this really dangerous illusion of control, so you need to actively look for your blind spots. And step 3, keep adjusting your flight. Don't ever assume that just because you took off successfully, your current trajectory is permanent. You have to keep steering. Which brings our narrative full circle, right back to that incredible wisdom from Papa Q Bear. Stay nimble and humble. Don't let your past successes trap you. Success is not a destination where you can finally just kick back and stop paying attention. Actually, it's a much higher altitude that requires even more care, even more flexibility, and so much more humility. So as you look at your own life and career today, ask yourself, are you admiring the wax on your wings, or are you actively watching the heat of the sun? Keep your eyes open, stay humble, and keep flying safely.